Before we dive in, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy stories where humanity proves its strength not with brute force, but with something far more unexpected. This is a story about a laugh that changed everything. Now, let's begin. The arena floated like a glass heart in the middle of a dead star's orbit, its transparent dome gleaming against the black. Rows of alien dignitaries lined the tiered stands, their scaled, feathered, and chitinous faces all fixed on the colossal reinforced platform at the center. Nothing moved down there except the soft shimmer of containment fields, and the thing inside them. Elias Mercer leaned against the railing of the lowest observation tier, hands tucked into the pockets of his dark jacket. He was human, the only one in this section, and he stood out like a spark in the void. The Dominion loved its ceremony, rigid, polished, and utterly humorless. He had the uneasy feeling they'd built this entire spectacle just to remind him how small humanity still was in their grand hierarchy. A low murmur rippled through the arena. Light panels along the dome dimmed as the main doors hissed open and the creature entered, though entered was the wrong word. It stalked. The predator was massive, all taut muscle beneath silver-black hide, its movement like liquid steel poured into flesh. For eyes, two forward, two slightly higher on its skull, scanned the chamber with calm, silent calculation. Its head brushed the low security field, setting off a faint ripple. Chains of energy anchored its limbs, but they looked fragile next to it. Elias could almost hear the Dominion's collective inhale. A Dominion officer stepped onto a raised platform opposite Elias. Valor was tall even for his kind, skin like marble carved by cold winds, voice crisp as a blade. "Ladies and representatives," he announced, "behold Subject Carx of the Outer Veil. The apex of its ecosystem. It has devoured fleets. It will learn to kneel." Elias raised a brow. Fleets? This thing looked like it could chew through a tank, but whole fleets. He didn't doubt Valor's flair for dramatic inflation. The Dominion adored its own stories. Technicians along the perimeter triggered psionic projectors, sending out a synchronized pulse. A faint hum filled the arena, vibrating in Elias's teeth. The predator didn't move. Another pulse. Stronger. The creature blinked slowly as if being spoken to in a language it found beneath it. "It is programmed to obey," Valor continued, his gaze locked on the beast like a man watching a fuse burn. "All creatures yield when the Dominion commands." Elias watched the predator's shoulders roll, the chains tightening against the subtle shift. Its breathing remained steady. Unimpressed. More officers tried, layering command frequencies. A few aliens in the stands shifted nervously when the predator tilted its head, not in confusion but boredom. If it were human it would have yawned. Elias's lips twitched. The entire thing was absurd. The cold proclamations, the polished procedures, the expectation that a living storm would just nod and obey. It was like watching someone politely instruct a hurricane to move left. Against his better judgment, he let out a soft, single laugh. It wasn't loud. Just enough to slip into the quiet gap between pulses. Every eye snapped toward him. More importantly, so did the predator's. The sound that left its chest wasn't a roar. It was silence, focused and sharp. The four eyes fixed on him with an intensity that burned. A ripple passed through the arena like a blade through water. The Dominion officers went rigid. Elias froze, feeling the weight of a thing that could end him in a heartbeat. The hum of psionic commands stuttered. For the first time since its capture, Subject Carx had reacted to something. To him. Valor's voice came low and controlled, but Elias could hear the fracture beneath it. "What did you do?" Elias forced a casual shrug, though his heart was hammering. "I laughed." A handful of alien dignitaries whispered in their guttural languages. Some leaned closer to their translation implants as though they'd missed something. Elias could practically feel the Dominion's perfect plan start to bend around him. The predator didn't lunge. It didn't snarl. It just watched, unmoving except for the subtle tightening of its stance. It was the way predators fixed their eyes on something they recognized, not as prey but as something new. The technicians repeated their commands. Nothing. No reaction. Only Elias held its attention, and even though his brain screamed at him to look away, he didn't. A Dominion security officer hissed something into a calm containment fields brightened, reinforcing, but the creature didn't test them. It simply shifted its weight so its front talons clicked against the floor once. Deliberate. Controlled. Valor stepped down from the platform and approached Elias, the thin gleam of authority in his posture. "Human," he said, almost spitting the word. "You will remain silent." Elias gave him a flat look. "Sure. Just didn't know laughing was a war crime." The officer's jaw tensed. The predator's gaze flicked between them, A slow, almost feline sweep. Then something subtle happened, barely perceptible, but it froze every technician in the control pit. The creature lowered itself by a fraction, not like a cornered animal but like it was acknowledging him. Elias didn't understand it, but the Dominion's monitoring systems exploded with alerts. Command frequencies, ignored. Psionic override, failed. Human acoustic anomaly, logged. Valor hissed into his comm, the glass dome vibrating faintly with the echo. Record everything, he ordered. Every breath. Every sound. Elias tried to keep his voice light, but the weight in the air was hard to ignore. Guess it just likes my sense of humor? No one laughed. The Dominion loved control. They built empires on obedience and fear. But in that frozen moment, their apex experiment was paying attention to a human who didn't belong here. Not because of authority. Not because of power. Because of a laugh. The hum of the psionics died away, technicians exchanging helpless glances. The predator didn't even glance at them. Its 4 eyes locked on Elias as though nothing else in the universe existed. Valor turned sharply. Bring him back tomorrow, he ordered. Same time. Alone. Elias straightened. Alone? It responded to you, Valor snapped. We'll isolate the variable. Elias's pulse thudded. He'd wanted out of this station since the moment the Dominion shuttle docked. But as the predator's gaze held his, a different kind of chill settled in his bones. The Dominion wasn't giving him a choice. As security escorted him out, the glass doors sealing behind him, Elias caught one last glimpse of the creature. It hadn't moved. It was still watching him. He wasn't sure if that was better or worse. And somewhere deep in the dark, beneath the Dominion's perfect structure, something had just shifted, quiet, invisible and irreversible. The corridor that led back to the arena was colder than Elias remembered. The Dominion built its stations like it built its wars, sleek, silent, suffocating. Even the lights seemed designed to remind everyone that they were being watched. 2 armed guards flanked him as he walked, their long, digitigrade legs whispering across the metal floor. Neither spoke, which was fine by him. The silence left room for the thrum beneath his ribs, the unease that had crept in since yesterday's encounter. He hadn't been able to shake the weight of those 4 eyes locking onto him as if nothing else in the galaxy mattered. He'd lain awake most of the night listening to the faint vibration of the station, wondering what kind of creature ignored Dominion psionics but turned toward a human laugh. The doors hissed open and the smell of sterilized air hit him like a sheet of frost. The arena floor was dimmer now, the stands empty. The grandeur of yesterday's display was gone, replaced with clinical precision. Scientists and officers lingered behind thick glass, murmuring into comlinks. High above, a line of surveillance drones hovered, their lenses focused on the center of the containment chamber. The predator, Subject Carwax, was already awake. It didn't pace or thrash like a trapped animal. It crouched low, still and patient, a shadow curled into itself. Even contained, it radiated a presence that made the air feel thinner. Elias felt it before he saw it, the subtle shift in the room's gravity as though the creature's awareness was a weight of its own. Valor was waiting near the control console, his posture carved from stone. Approach slowly, he said without turning to look at Elias. And speak only when instructed. Elias shoved his hands into his pockets because keeping them still felt unnatural. Right. Because I'm clearly the one in control here. Valor's jaw tightened but he didn't reply. He stepped back and let Elias cross the safety threshold. The containment field hummed faintly, casting ripples of blue light across the floor. The predator's eyes opened, 2 first, then the upper pair, a slow uncoiling of focus. It didn't move toward the technicians. It didn't react to the drones. It tracked him. Only him. Elias stopped a few paces from the containment barrier. His throat felt dry but he forced himself to speak. Morning, big guy. Miss me? The creature tilted its head slightly. The sound it made was low, deep enough that he felt it in his chest rather than heard it with his ears. A vibration. A reply. In the observation bay, someone muttered, response pattern confirmed. Valor folded his arms, eyes narrowed. Again, he ordered. Elias exhaled slowly through his nose. He wasn't an animal trainer. He wasn't a soldier anymore. But something in those 4 eyes reminded him of every firefight he'd ever walked out of alive, how survival often belonged to the one who didn't flinch first. He tried again, this time letting out a small, quiet laugh. Not forced. Just natural, like an inside joke with himself. The creature rose. Fluid. Precise. The chains of light tethering its limbs shuddered with the movement. It stepped closer to the barrier, lowering its head slightly, the upper eyes narrowing in a way that almost resembled focus. Alarms didn't blare. No one screamed. But every scientist behind the glass stiffened. Valor's voice came low and measured. Do you understand what this means, human? The Dominion has used every control frequency at its disposal. It did not answer. But it answers you. Elias didn't look at him. Yeah, I noticed. A technician called out from the control bay, psionic amplitude increased by 30%. No reaction to command tones. The creature's nostrils flared, not in aggression. Elias was sure of it, but in some kind of recognition. He could feel it, a strange pull between them. Like standing too close to a live wire that wasn't trying to burn him, only acknowledge he was there. Valor stepped forward. We will train it through you. Whether you agree or not. Elias laughed once, short and disbelieving. Oh yeah, because that sounds like a fantastic idea. Put the apex of nightmares on a leash, hand me the rope, and hope it doesn't bite my head off. It listens to you, Valor said flatly. It's looking at me, Elias corrected. Not the same thing. The predator let out another low sound, like thunder buried in the floor. Elias noticed the way it mirrored his small movements. When he shifted his weight, its head adjusted. When he tilted his chin, it responded with the same measured slowness. He realized suddenly that it wasn't mimicking instinctively. It was studying, choosing. Valor's voice cut into the quiet. Step closer. Elias turned to him. You're out of your mind. Step closer, Valor repeated, and the rifles of the two guards behind him clicked softly, a reminder of how thin his options were. Elias muttered something under his breath and took one step forward. The containment barrier hummed louder. The predator's lower set of eyes widened a fraction, and its chest expanded, drawing in a breath that sounded too deliberate for a beast. Elias could feel it watching every detail of him, heartbeat, breath, voice. He forced himself to relax his shoulders, then exhaled a small, controlled laugh. The sound cracked through the sterile air like a spark. The creature pressed its talons gently against the containment field. Energy rippled outward but didn't flare in warning. The beast didn't attack. It mirrored him again, lowering its head to his level, for eyes steady on his. Elias forgot for a moment that there were guards behind him, or a Dominion officer watching like a hawk. All he could hear was the faint pulse of his heartbeat and the deep, resonant breath of the thing on the other side. Someone whispered, "It's sinking with him." Valor spoke sharply. Enough. Pull him back. The guards reached for Elias, but the predator let out a sound, not loud, not violent, but so low it vibrated through the chamber and rattled their nerves. The guards froze mid-step. Even the drones jerked back slightly. Elias turned toward Valor, his voice quieter now. Whatever you think this thing is, it doesn't want you. It's not afraid of you. And it sure as hell isn't obeying you. It doesn't need to want us, Valor replied. It only needs to be useful. Elias looked back at the creature and felt a strange flicker deep in his gut. Not fear, not exactly. Something heavier. If the Dominion forced this thing into their wars, they wouldn't just be weaponizing muscle. They'd be lighting a match they couldn't control. The predator lowered its head further, an unmistakable gesture of attention. Elias met its gaze and whispered, "Yeah, I see you." Valor motioned sharply to the guards. "That's enough for today. We have what we need." Elias let them escort him out, but he didn't take his eyes off the creature until the doors sealed. Behind that wall of reinforced glass and humming fields, the predator didn't move. It just watched him leave, eyes burning like stars waiting for something only he could give. He told himself it was the Dominion's problem now. But deep down, he knew that whatever line had been crossed wasn't going to stay in that room. Not anymore. The simulation chamber was not built for comfort. It was built for war. Layers of reinforced alloy encased the walls, and rows of Dominion officers lined the upper observation deck like vultures perched above a battlefield. Holographic terrain flickered into place. Ruined cities, smoke-stained skies, and fractured spires. It was a carefully engineered world of violence, a training ground for a predator they had no right to control. Elias stood on the lower deck, the only human in a sea of Dominion personnel. He tugged at the collar of his flight jacket, its fabric suddenly too tight around his throat. The air in here carried the sharp metallic tang of overpowered shield generators, and beneath it all, something else, something alive. The gates opened and Subject Kara X stepped into the chamber. The creature moved without hesitation now. Its body flowed like shadow over steel, every movement precise, calculated. The Dominion had adjusted its restraints to thin bands at its forearms, but everyone in the room knew they were more for show than actual control. If it wanted to tear through them, it could. Valor's voice slid through the chamber like a blade through silk. You will initiate the sequence, human. It responds only to you. Elias glanced up at the observation deck. Dominion officers watched him through tinted visors, their expressions hidden, but their posture radiated expectation. They thought this was the moment their weapon would become obedient. They didn't understand what they were trying to hold. He stepped forward, boots whispering against the steel floor. The Predator turned to him before any of the lights changed, before the sirens announced the start of the trial. Its eyes locked on him with a calm that didn't belong in a war room. He let out a low breath and, almost against his own judgment, gave a short laugh. The sound was quiet, but it cut through the hum of machinery. The creature straightened, talons clicking softly. The Dominion officers began recording data streams in a frenzy. Elias ignored them. The first wave of simulated combatants spawned in with a flash of blue light. Mechanical soldiers, modeled after a rival Dominion faction. They advanced in formation, faceless and efficient. Valor barked through the comm, commanded to engage. Elias didn't give commands. He just looked at the creature and tilted his chin toward the oncoming wave. It tilted its head back in the same way. Then it moved. Speed didn't describe it properly. It was something else, something like inevitability. Shade, as Elias had begun calling it in his head, tore through the holographic soldiers with terrifying grace. Not random violence. Surgical strikes. Each movement was a choice. One swipe of its claws reduced a machine to sparking ruin. Another step and it vaulted a collapsing wall like it was air. The Dominion officers were silent now, their self-assured control replaced by uneasy fascination. Elias followed the action on the floor monitors. The creature didn't need to be told what to do. It understood patterns. It anticipated. The second wave deployed heavier weapons, but Shade was already ahead of them, weaving between their targeting arcs like it was reading their minds. This is beyond combat instinct, one scientist whispered over the comm. It's coordination. Elias didn't correct them. They didn't see it the way he did. The creature wasn't following orders. It was responding to him. His stance, his breathing, the small tilt of his head. They'd accidentally created a language neither side fully understood. The final target appeared, a cluster of simulation civilians. Not soldiers. Not machines. Figures designed to mimic the chaos of real war zones. Dominion training scenarios always ended with a test of obedience. Would the subject eliminate everything in its path or recognize non-combatants? Clear the field, Valor commanded. The Predator slowed. Its talons dug lightly into the steel floor, eyes narrowing on the holographic civilians. Its chest expanded with a deep, controlled breath. It didn't move forward. Valor repeated the order, sharper now. Clear the field. Elias stepped closer to the observation line. He could see the minute tension ripple through the creature's frame. Not fear. Defiance. Valor's voice hissed into his ear. Make it obey, human. Elias clenched his jaw. That's not how this works. It must obey, Valor said, icy and absolute. The Predator glanced toward Elias, then back at the civilians. It let out a low sound, softer than a growl, almost like a question. Elias exhaled and let a laugh slip out, quiet but deliberate. Shade tilted its head, recognizing the sound. Then it turned away from the civilians and went still. The Dominion control board erupted in confused chatter. One of the scientists slammed their hand on the console. It's ignoring the kill sequence. It's making a choice, Elias murmured, though no one seemed to hear him. Valor's voice sharpened to a razor edge. Install the collar. The words cut through the room like a gunshot. Elias's stomach dropped. The neural collar, the Dominion's favorite method of control. A fail-safe that stripped choice away and left only obedience. They had planned this from the start. Technicians hurried in with the device, a gleaming band of black alloy with pulsating veins of silver light. Elias felt heat crawl up the back of his neck. You can't be serious, he said. Valor's cold gaze found him through the glass. We gave you your chance. It listens but it does not obey. That makes it dangerous. Elias stepped toward the containment gate, ignoring the rifles tracking him. It's not a weapon. It's not some machine you can program. It will be. The technicians approached the Predator cautiously. Shade didn't attack, but its stance shifted, muscles rippling beneath its hide. A deep rumble vibrated through the chamber, soft, warning, alive. Elias could feel the tension like a storm front. If they forced that collar on, the Dominion might gain their weapon, or they might ignite something they couldn't contain. The technicians reached forward. The Predator's eyes snapped toward Elias. For one impossible second, everything went silent. The officers, the hum of the machines, even Elias's breath. He laughed again. Not out of humor. Out of defiance. A sound that said, "I see you. You're not theirs." The Predator surged backward just enough to make the technician stumble. Not an attack. A refusal. Valor's comm finally cracked. Contain it. Rifles powered up. Shield walls ignited. Elias threw up a hand. Don't you dare shoot it. No one listened. Dominion protocols didn't care about understanding. Only control. The Predator remained still, glaring at the soldiers but not striking. It wasn't panicking. It was calculating. Elias saw it in those 4 burning eyes, the same quiet intelligence that had unsettled the entire arena days ago. He turned to the glass where Valor stood. You're not going to control it this way. It listens to me because I'm not trying to own it. Valor's voice came through the speaker, cold and final. Then it's a liability. The rifles raised. The Predator lowered its head, muscles coiled like steel cables under strain. Elias's hand closed into a fist. If they fired, it wouldn't end with containment. It would end with blood. Then the alarms screamed. Not Dominion alarms, perimeter breach alarms. The chamber lights shifted from sterile white to pulsing red. A distorted voice cut through the comms, enemy fleet signatures breaching orbit. The Predator's head snapped toward the sound before anyone else moved. It sensed the danger first. Valor barked new orders, soldiers breaking formation to prepare for the unknown threat. For the first time, the Dominion's perfect control fractured. Elias and Shade were still standing at the center of it. And Elias knew, whatever was coming next would decide whether this creature became their weapon or something far more dangerous. The station shuddered as the first impact rattled through the hull, a low rolling sound like thunder under steel. Red lights pulsed across the corridors, and a shrill alarm howled through every deck. Elias had heard war alarms before, but Dominion sirens had a particular sharpness. Cold, clinical, built to remind everyone that survival depended on obedience. He ran against the current of soldiers moving toward fortified lines, their armor gleaming in the crimson wash of emergency lighting. The air was thick with tension. He could hear the distant clamor of locking bulkheads, the clatter of rifle stocks against metal floors, the clipped, almost panicked radio chatter in languages he didn't speak. The Dominion liked to pretend they didn't panic. The pitch in those voices said otherwise. He pushed through the last sealed door and stepped into the containment wing. Half the security field was already offline. Energy crackled weakly along the floor where the Predator's cell used to hum with power. And at the center of the fractured chamber stood Subject Car-X, unchained. The creature was no longer crouched or coiled. It stood tall, every inch of it radiating quiet, controlled power. Not chaos. Not rage. Intent. Around it lay the twisted remains of the restraints and shattered emitters. Shade hadn't escaped in a frenzy. It had dismantled its prison with precision. Elias felt his pulse hammer against his ribs. Of course you did. Behind him, a squad of Dominion soldiers burst into the corridor, rifles raised. The moment they saw the creature, they froze, not out of discipline but the kind of instinctive fear that prey feels when facing a natural apex. The commander barked orders in a clipped language, trying to regain control, but no one stepped forward. Shade's eyes shifted past them and landed on Elias. All 4 focused, sharp as a blade. He lifted both hands slowly. Easy, big guy. Not your enemy. The station jolted again as another impact rocked the walls. The soldiers stumbled, rifles swaying. Shade didn't flinch. It merely turned its head toward the ceiling as if it could feel the invading fleet tearing through orbit. The creature let out a low, rolling sound, a noise that carried through the chamber like distant storm surf. Elias understood it without needing words. It knew what was coming. Valor's voice snapped over the intercom, sharp and furious. All units to defensive positions. Do not let the subject leave the containment level. The soldiers tightened their grips. Shade tilted its head down slightly, its upper set of eyes narrowing. Elias saw it in an instant. If they fired, the station would have 2 wars happening at once. He stepped between the rifles and the creature. Lower the weapons. The commander hissed something back at him. Elias didn't understand the words, but he recognized the meaning. Move or die. He didn't move. You fire and you won't survive the reload. The Predator's breathing slowed, almost matching his own. The storm outside deepened, a violent, distant percussion that shook loose dust from the ceiling. One of the soldiers flinched. That was all it took. Shade's body tensed, every muscle ready. Elias turned his head slightly and did the one thing that had always gotten its attention. He laughed. It wasn't loud, just a single dry sound that cut through the shrieking alarms. The effect was immediate. Shade's stance eased and its claws withdrew from the cracked floor. For a heartbeat, the Dominion soldiers saw what Elias had known all along. This wasn't some unthinking beast waiting for orders. It was waiting for a choice. Another explosion rippled through the station, closer this time. Someone shouted over the comm about boarding parties breaching the hangar decks. Dominion command was unraveling, their clean lines of authority fraying in real time. The commander gave a sharp order and the soldiers fell back, sealing the bulkhead. Elias was left alone with Shade. He could feel the weight of its gaze, the air vibrating softly with its low growl. "Yeah," Elias said quietly. "I think we're past cages now." He turned and started toward the exit. Behind him, Shade moved like shadow flowing after him. The bulkhead doors slid open at their approach, and for the first time since arriving on this station, Elias walked beside it, not with fear gnawing at his spine, but with the strange certainty that this was exactly how things were supposed to unfold. The corridors ahead were chaos. Alarms wailed. Dominion officers shouted into fractured comm networks. Holographic indicators flickered between control and override as boarding signatures multiplied. The enemy fleet wasn't testing the Dominion. It was dismantling them piece by piece. Shade's senses were sharper than any scanner. It moved without hesitation, guiding itself toward the threat like it could smell it in the air. Elias followed, slipping between panicked soldiers who gave the creature a wide berth. No one tried to stop them. Fear outranked orders tonight. In the main concourse, the battle had already broken through. Black-armored boarders surged through the far breach, their weapons spitting bolts of light. Dominion soldiers dug in behind half-formed barricades, the exchange brutal and uneven. Elias ducked behind a collapsed panel as a blast ripped through the wall inches from his head. Shade didn't duck. It walked forward. The boarders noticed it too late. The creature moved like the air itself parted for it. One heartbeat it was beside Elias, the next it was among them. Blasters lit up the smoke, but none found their mark. Shade tore through the enemy formation in silence. No battle cry, no frenzy. Only efficient, lethal motion. Elias watched the fear ripple through both sides. Dominion soldiers hesitated, unsure whether the creature was ally or new threat. The boarders didn't get that luxury, they fell before they could decide. Shade wasn't fighting for either side. It was simply moving through the world, unstoppable. A squad of Dominion soldiers tried to reassert control, shouting command tones into their comms. The Predator didn't even acknowledge them. It turned only when Elias stepped forward, breathing hard. He gave a short laugh, an exhausted, disbelieving thing, and the creature's head snapped toward him like it had been waiting for the sound. They moved together. Elias wasn't leading, not really. But Shade followed his steps all the same, carving a path toward the hangar where escape pods and shuttles would be waiting, or burning. Halfway there, the speakers crackled with Valor's voice, laced with static and fury. "Human. Bring it back now. That creature belongs to the Dominion." Elias stared up at the speaker, a wry twist pulling at his mouth. "Yeah," he muttered, "good luck with that." Shade's head tilted toward the voice, not with fear, but with a low, resonant rumble that sounded almost like laughter. The next blast took down the power grid in the corridor ahead, plunging everything into emergency lighting. Elias and Shade moved through the flickering dark like two figures made of the same shadow. Behind them, Dominion forces were too busy dying to stop them. Ahead, the hangar roared with battle. Elias didn't know if the creature trusted him. He didn't even know if trust was a word that applied. But as they stepped into that chaos together, he understood one thing with absolute clarity: Shade wasn't theirs anymore. And for the first time neither was he. The hangar was a storm of light and ruin. Broken starships smoldered against the walls, their hulls torn open like paper. Sirens bled into the crack of gunfire, the steady pulse of rail cannons beating against the station's fractured shell. The air smelled of scorched metal and ozone, thick with the tremor of engines running on borrowed time. Dominion soldiers and boarders clashed across every deck, but in the center of it all stood a void, an open stretch of floor no one dared to cross. Shade filled it like a living shadow. Elias moved in step with the creature, his heartbeat thrumming in his ears. He had walked this hangar 100 times as a mechanic, always in the background, always watching someone else's war. Now, every spotlight tracked the thing beside him, and every rifle shifted uncertainly toward him. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was the kind of awe that cracked the spine of old hierarchies. Above the hangar, a reinforced viewing platform shimmered to life. Valor appeared behind a translucent shield, Dominion officers clustered at her flanks. Her eyes burned with the fury of someone watching her empire slip between her fingers. "Human," she said, her voice filling the bay, amplified and cold. "Step away from the specimen. You are out of your depth." Elias felt the creature's breath at his shoulder, hot and steady. "You've been saying that since day one," he murmured. Valor raised one elegant, clawed hand. The station's auto-defense turrets rotated in unison, targeting the creature. A metallic chorus locked into place. "This is your final warning. Step away or I will burn it down. You along with it." The boarders at the far end of the hangar didn't wait for diplomacy. They surged forward, pouring fire into Dominion lines. In an instant, the entire bay erupted into chaos. Dominion turrets split their aim between the boarders and Shade. Energy bolts carved streaks through the smoke, setting the floor ablaze. Elias dove behind a ruined shuttle wing, his pulse hammering against his ribs. Shade didn't dive. It roared. The sound wasn't like anything made by human throats. It was deep and rolling, a sound that cut through the chaos like a blade, vibrating through every wall, every rifle, every terrified soldier in the hangar. The turrets hesitated, an infinitesimal glitch in their synchronized fire. That was all it needed. The Predator moved, not like a soldier but like a force of nature. It lunged through the blinding storm of light, shredding the nearest automated gun in a single strike. Sparks cascaded down like fractured stars. Dominion soldiers scattered, their training unraveling in real time as something older and more primal rewrote the rules of engagement. Elias scrambled after it, ducking bursts of plasma fire. Shade didn't need orders, didn't need strategy. It carved a line through both armies with surgical brutality, its movements neither reckless nor merciful. Every step it took seemed deliberate, almost protective. Valor slammed a control panel, and a containment field surged around the central deck. Blue-white energy arced upward, boxing the creature in with a blinding hum. For a heartbeat, the Predator stood in a cage of light again, the Dominion's last desperate attempt to reclaim control. Elias saw the flicker of recognition in the creature's eyes. Remembered the cell. The chains. The endless commands it never obeyed. He rose from cover, lungs burning, and shouted through the roar of engines, "Shade!" The name wasn't official. It wasn't in any Dominion record. It was something he'd whispered through the glass when they thought no one was listening. And when the sound reached it, Shade's head snapped toward him. Not toward Valor, not toward the boarders, but to him. It didn't obey her. It never had. But it heard him. The energy cage crackled. Shade dug its claws into the floor, muscles coiling, then slammed its full weight upward. The field rippled, warped, then shattered in a burst of sparks that rained down like a second sunrise. Valor staggered back on the platform, her mask of control cracking for the first time. Elias sprinted across the deck as Shade tore through the last of the turrets. The boarders began to retreat, realizing they hadn't stormed a station, they'd walked into the path of something far worse. Dominion soldiers hesitated, staring at their supposed specimen, standing unbound beneath the floodlights. Valor's voice turned feral. "Kill it." They didn't move. Shade let out a low rumble, not a roar this time but a sound that was almost warning. Its four eyes narrowed. Elias stopped at its side, breathing hard, and for the first time since he'd met it, the creature turned its head slightly downward, close enough for him to feel the heat radiating from its skin. Above them, the viewing platform shattered under its own weight as Shade hurled a piece of broken turret straight into the control node. Alarms blared, and the station shuddered as structural integrity dipped below safe levels. Valor clung to the railing, staring down at them with naked hatred. "Do you think it cares about you, human?" she hissed through the speakers. "When it's done it will crush you too." Elias laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not the brittle sound of someone bluffing, but the kind of laugh that cracked through smoke and panic like a clean blade. Shade's eyes snapped toward the sound, focused, calm. "That's where you're wrong," he said quietly. The creature shifted its stance, not toward him, but beside him. Like a wolf choosing its hunting ground. The docking clamps screamed as the outer hull buckled. The invaders were retreating, Dominion command collapsing in on itself. This was no longer a battle. It was a collapse, and Shade stood in the eye of it, unclaimed, untamed, and very much alive. Elias saw the decision unfold not in words but in movement. The Predator stepped toward the shuttle bay doors, its massive frame silhouetted against the chaos. It wasn't staying. This had never been its war. But then it stopped, looked back at him, and gave the faintest rumbling sound, a sound that wasn't command or growl. An invitation. Elias didn't hesitate. He climbed aboard the nearest transport as Shade leapt into the launch corridor, moving with terrifying grace. Systems sputtered, alarms screamed, but the engines caught. The bay doors blew open in a rush of light, and together they shot into the black. The station shrank behind them, a crumbling monument to a power that had just been broken by the thing it thought it controlled. Elias sat in the pilot's seat, hands shaking, heart hammering in his throat. Shade crouched at the far end of the shuttle, a living silhouette against the stars. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. They were both done being owned. As the stars streaked into lines around them, Elias let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. For the first time he wasn't running from anything. He was running with something far bigger than himself. And far more dangerous than the Dominion would ever be. The Predator had ignored every command it was ever given. But it had answered his laugh. And that changed everything.